Hi, I'm Josh, and this is everything I wish I'd known when I became an author. I find that most of the advice given to writers is kind of intermediate. It can be vague, and we use really bizarre insider terms like vomit draft, beta readers, third person omniscient, that nobody other than writers know what these words mean. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you how you can start writing today to start your first novel. No fluff, no filler, just practical advice. I'm going to walk you through each stage from coming up with an idea to finishing your book, and then in future videos I'm going to talk about how to get your book published and then how to market it to make sure that it sells. Okay, so those weird terms that I mentioned in the introduction, what do they mean? Plotter, also known as an architect or an outliner. A plotter likes to know everything about their story before they start writing it. Just like an architect would not start building a house before they have a full plan, a plotter likes to know what happens in each scene. They like to know what their characters look like, what their characters feel like, how they talk. They want to know how it ends, how it starts, and they want to know what happens in the middle. Good examples of these are John Grisham, R.L. Stine, and J.K. Rowling. Pantser, also known as a discovery writer or a gardener. Pantser as in writing by the seat of your pants, the complete opposite to the plotter. The pantsers don't make an outline, they just put pen to paper, see what comes out of it, they trust their instincts and their judgment in the moment, and then they make sense of the story afterwards. It's important to remember that this is not the same thing as just waiting for inspiration. Pantsers, just like plotters, sit down at a regular time with discipline and they put in a concerted effort to get the book done. Famous examples of these include Stephen King and George R.R. Martin. It can be really difficult to know whether you are more of a plotter or more of a pantser until you are writing regularly, so I really just advise you to try both styles, see what works for you, see what you enjoy more, and see what ends up with a better product. I find that authors can be quite territorial about which style they think is superior and can almost act like it's more virtuous to write without an outline or to make an outline before they start writing. But both of these styles are valid. Find what works for you. To quickly summarize their sort of advantages and disadvantages, plotters spend less time revising because they've come up with everything in advance. They have stronger endings because they can send everything in the book leading up to that point to create a really killer ending. Pantsers, on the other hand, find their approach more enjoyable. They say that they feel restricted when they have an outline, and also their stories can be more organic, they can be more surprising. They also argue that the characters are more internally consistent because everything the character does is based on who they are as a person rather than what the plot demands them to do in that particular scene. But just to reiterate, both styles are valid. Find what works for you, experiment a bit with both, maybe you're a bit of a mixture. Prose. Prose is just how we write books. It's meant to emulate how people really speak as opposed to structured styles such as poetry or playwriting or screenwriting. A draft. A draft is your story fully written but not yet ready to be published. You will write many, many drafts. A manuscript. A manuscript is your story when it is complete. This used to refer to a physical printed out copies, but nowadays people do also use the term manuscript to refer to a digital copy. This is what you will hand over to a publisher. Beta readers, editors, proofreaders. Okay, let's be honest, you can't afford to hire a professional editor or a proofreader yet, so you're probably going to rely on your friends and family a lot. Beta readers are the people that you hand your work to and you just get your general impressions. They're usually your friends and family, and they usually say things like, "Wow, you wrote a book, it's amazing." That's helpful. Editors make changes to the story and the characters to make it stronger. It's worth remembering that editors aren't there to make your story something different. A good editor will find out what your book is already trying to achieve and then make adjustments so that it can be more effective. If you're self-published, it's up to you whether you edit the book yourself or you hire a freelancer. If you are traditionally published, the publisher will organize that for you. Proofreaders are there to check your spelling, your punctuation, and your grammar. Do not attempt to do this yourself, no matter how confident you feel with your grammar and your spelling and everything, because when you've been spending months with your story and you have a completed manuscript, you are now blind to all of the errors that are in there. Get someone else to do it. Traditional publishing and self-publishing. So traditional publishing is what everyone did back in the day, and it still remains the most popular way to publish a book. Basically, traditional publishing is that you give your manuscript to a publishing company. They usually reject it, but if they don't, they will take it and they will arrange for an editor and a proofreader, and they will also sort out your marketing and sales of your book and distribution, leaving you to enjoy your royalties and get working on that sequel. Self-publishing is a new platform, usually online, and is a way for authors to publish the book themselves. It gives more creative freedom to the author. You don't have to get anyone to approve your book, but on the other hand, because there's no middleman, you have to do a lot more jobs yourself. You have to edit the book yourself, you have to arrange a cover, you have to do the blurb, you have to distribute it, unless of course you are able to outsource that to freelance workers. And let's face it, at this stage, you don't know what you're doing. Genre fiction and literary fiction. Okay, so this comes up a little bit, and it's another thing that authors and readers can be a bit territorial about, but basically it's two different approaches to what should literature be. In its simplest terms, genre fiction views literature as entertainment. These are things that can fit into genres such as horror, romance, thrillers, comedy, etc., which is very useful for bookshops and libraries to arrange their books. Genre fiction tends to focus heavily on character and plot, and is successful if it sells a lot of books. Literary fiction, on the other hand, views literature as high art, and in some ways is quite close to poetry, especially in how much it focuses on what the language does. So where genre fiction focuses on character and plot, literary fiction focuses on how words and language are used, and also the ideas in the book. Generally, you would say that literary fiction is successful if it wins a lot of awards and is studied in universities, rather than selling a lot of books. There are also mixtures of genre and literary fiction. Again, it can be a spectrum. Examples I would give that fall somewhere in the middle would be The Road by Cormac McCarthy, and also American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Just like with being a plotter or a pantser, I would strongly advise you to try both styles. There are technical differences which I will go through in future. Try both. See which works for you, but also have a look at what you're reading, and you may find that you already do lean to one camp more than the other based on what interests you. Should you handwrite your book or should you type it? Of course, it's up to you. Generally, I find that handwriting is far better for coming up with original ideas, but typing is far more time efficient. So I like to make my plan and outline and brainstorm on paper, and then I like to type up my drafts. Okay, so how do you actually go from nothing to a finished manuscript? I'm going to go through each of these stages in future videos in a lot more depth, but I'm going to quickly run through them now. I'm going to go quite quickly, so pay attention. 1. Come up with an idea. You can either use a writing prompt, you can pick something that interests you, or you can make an observation of something that you see. Sit down, brainstorm ideas around it, make connections, and this will lead you to an outline. It's good practice to keep a list of all your ideas for future use. You may want to come back to them. 2. Outline. Okay, if you think you're a pantser, just skip this step. Basically, you want to sit down and work out what happens in each chapter or scene of the book. Develop your characters, your setting, and the plot. 3. Write your vomit draft, also known as a zero draft. It's called vomit draft because it's not pretty and you just want to do it as quickly as possible. Sit down, type up your draft from the first page to the last page. Don't worry about problems that you notice. You may want to make a note of them, but don't worry about spelling, any grammar, any punctuation. Leave it wrong. This is your vomit draft. It's not meant to be good. Just get the words on paper. Congratulations, you just finished your first draft. Well done. 4. Take a break. I would suggest at least 2 weeks of not looking at the book so you can come back to it with fresh eyes. Some people like to work on multiple projects and rotate, so they spend this break working on something else. Stephen King likes to write a short story when he's taking some time away from a novel, but he's Stephen King and we're not. Or you can just take a break. You've earned it. Do not look at your book. 5. Read through your vomit draft. It's a good idea to print it out so you can highlight it, make notes, underline things, ignore spelling, ignore punctuation, ignore grammar. What you're looking for are plot holes, underdeveloped setting and character, and just ways that you can make the story stronger. 6. Write your second draft. Okay, you don't need to write the whole thing from scratch. Just take the copy you've already got and apply those changes based on the notes that you came up with. Personally, I like to keep a separate copy of the original 0 draft so that I can see how my story developed as I worked on it. 7. Give it to beta readers. This is the first time someone's going to see that story other than you. Go grab some of your friends and family and give them your second draft to read. I would avoid writers, but it is a good idea to get people who like to read for pleasure. Listen to what they have to say about it. You don't have to take their advice, but don't step in to argue with them and defend your book and tell them why they're wrong, because they're not. Listen to when they were interested and when they were bored. This is useful information. Also, pay attention to things that they don't understand. It's worth knowing when you don't explain things properly because you know your book really, really well now, so it's useful for you to see when a reader is actually left a little bit confused. Repeat stages 5 through 7 as many times as you need to until you're happy with the story. You will write many, many drafts. 8. Proofread. And I'm going to repeat this. Do not do this yourself. A computer spell checker is fine, but really I like to go grab that friend, we all have that friend, who likes to correct other people's grammar and spelling mistakes. They are usually annoying, but they are now your savior. Give them your book, get them to underline every mistake that you have made, and then you are going to correct it. Okay, you could ask that friend to correct it themselves, but I think it's a better learning experience for you to do it yourself. Now is your opportunity to get at all those spelling, grammar, and punctuation mistakes that you have been putting off and biting your teeth and staying away from. Now we can correct them. Now that you're not going to make any changes to the book, you're not going to redraft it, and there's no point changing spelling mistakes when you're then going to cut a paragraph and replace it with a new one that has a whole new list of spelling mistakes in. Also, you don't know how many spelling mistakes are in there. I promise you, just like with everything else, because you've been looking at that book for so long, you are completely blind to the same spelling mistakes that you've been reading over and over again. Get someone else to do it. Someone critical. You will thank them for it. And that's it. You've gone from nothing to having an idea, to making a first draft, to showing it to people, and you now have a finished, proofread book with strong characters, strong setting, and a strong story. Over the next 8 weeks, I'm going to go through each of these 8 steps individually in detail, answering questions that you may have. If you have any questions, please put them down there in the comments below. But for now, I would give you 2 little tasks. The first is work out where you can do your writing and at what time. Have a look at your schedule, and you really do want to commit a little bit of time every single day. It's good to build a habit, and we'll do a video on that in future. But find where is good for you to do it, whether in your home or out in a cafe or somewhere like that. Your other task is have a think about the sort of books that you consume. What interests you? Who are your favorite authors? And really try and ask yourself, what is it about them? Because we don't want to copy those other books, but we want to be able to emulate what it is that you admire and do that in your own way. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this, please remember to give the video a thumbs up. That tells me and it tells YouTube that you want to see more videos like this. If you want to see those other in-depth tutorials and also see the videos on marketing and publishing a book, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. See you next week. Happy writing.